I just bought some Let's Resin urethane off of Amazon. This is my first time buying anything from Let's Resin. They're getting very popular on YouTube, so I thought I'd check it out. Today, we're gonna make castings. We're gonna bend them, break them, smash them, twist them, burn them, melt them. We're gonna put them to the test. So join me and let's see how this urethane resin performs. I always love it when resin comes with its own gloves. Part A, Part B. I'm gonna give it a good shake because I don't know how long it's been in the box. Hey, come here. So the first thing that I'm noticing is this resin has a very low viscosity. That means it's so runny that it's dripping down the side of the container and down the side of the cup. That's not necessarily a bad thing. It can actually be really good when you're making very thin-walled parts in a two-part mold. It's just something to keep in mind. Now you do have to work fairly quick because the working time is only about 2 minutes with a demold time of 10 minutes. So this is a very fast setting urethane. When fully cured, this urethane is supposed to turn bright white, but I want to see how well it takes some green tint. So I'm going to add about 5 drops into part B before I mix it with part A. Okay, start the clock. We've got 2 minutes to use up all of this green. So I'm going to fill my 1-inch cube mold, and I poured the remaining into the other smaller square molds. Let's also see how well it takes mica powder. So I'm going to use this purple mica powder and spread it into the mold first, and then I'll pour the urethane over the top and see what kind of results we get from that. Next, I'm going to do a similar thing with some blue paint in the mold. This should give it a nice painted finish without seeing brush strokes in the final product. Painting a mold is a really cool trick if you can get it to work. Sometimes it takes several coats in the mold. In this case, it took 3 coats. Now, you remember what I said about it being a very low viscosity resin? Well, check this out. It was extremely hard to pour this into this really thin mold. It was dripping all over the place. And a clay stopper just so it doesn't run out. Now it looks like I mixed up a little bit too much resin, so I always have extra molds standing by just in case I have to use up the resin. I don't like just letting it go to waste in a cup. So I'm just filling these other molds just to get rid of it and see how they turn out. If you've never seen urethane resin cure, well, here's your chance. This is a time-lapse shot of what it looks like when it cures. It's pretty cool. It forms a little white cloud that spreads, and then it's ready to demold. I have a feeling that this resin is going to be great for cold casting, so I've got some copper metal powder here from Smooth On, and I'm going to spread it into the mold. This will ensure that the copper reaches the surface where I'm going to buff it later. I'm also going to mix it into part B before I mix the 2 parts together and pour it into the mold. I put quite a bit in there because I want to make sure that the copper gets around to all parts of the casting. This time it pours into the mold really nicely. I love how thin it is because I know it's getting to all parts of the mold. Now, one thing that I did not notice is that my mold was not sealed up properly and it was leaking all over the place. So it doesn't look like I'm going to get a great casting out of this one. It's only been a few minutes and my parts are all ready to demold. This is pretty exciting. Let's see how that mica powder casting turned out. Ooh, it's very shimmery. It's pretty cool. It looks a little thin in some areas, but it's a neat effect. If I were to tint it or paint it first, then it probably would have turned out way better. Let's check out the blue painted one. They pop out of the mold pretty easily. That's a good sign. This one's my favorite right here. It looks so good. There are no brush strokes and the paint is embedded into the cast part. The cube turned out really good too. It looks smooth, solid, and I don't see any entrapped bubbles. Now this one did not turn out that great. The mold definitely leaked because the resin was so thin it was able to sneak right through the cracks. So what we've got is some really thin areas where the cast part did not fill out properly. You can see it's very flexible because I pulled it out of the mold right as it cured, and that actually makes the flashing really easy to take off. These cast parts did set up a little bit longer, so you can tell they are stiffer. They still have a little bit of flexibility to them, but they definitely feel like plastic, not like rubber. Believe it or not, these little squares here were part of the resin that was tinted green. It would definitely take a lot more than 5 drops to make the green noticeable. These were left over from the copper cold casting, and they feel really squishy with kind of a plasticky shell around them, almost like they're sealed in a baggie. It's got a very weird texture to it. It would take a lot longer for these to cure than just the 10 minutes for sure. You can especially see it in this longer piece. It cracked open here and it just looks like melted chocolate. So I'm definitely going to give the coin casting a lot more time to cure. Here it is now. I'm pulling it out just so I can take the flashing off of it. So I'll set it aside and let it cure for 10 more minutes or so before I start buffing it. At this point, I'm thinking, yeah, maybe this material does not work so well for cold casting. We'll see. All right, let's get to the durability test, my favorite part. First, we're going to test the flexibility of this material, see how far we can bend it before it snaps, if it snaps. Pretty good so far. Oh, there we go. So we've got 25, 45, 70, 80, 90, 105 degrees before it snaps. That's pretty good. Let's check the twisting ability. Looks like we can get around about 45 degrees before it snaps. Can we compress it and crush it? Will it break into pieces or will it take it? At this point, this is about as far as my vise will go. You can see the vise is no longer parallel. So that 1-inch cube stood up to the test. This might be my favorite test right here. I just want to see what it does when we burn it. Does it catch fire? Does it spark? Does it put itself out? Does it melt? We'll find out. So it looks like it keeps on burning for a little while. It's not melting, it's not dripping, it's just burning. So it's definitely flammable. It also self-extinguished, which was kind of interesting. Next up, I want to see the machinability of it. It looks like it cuts really, really well with a Dremel tool. I get some nice big chips. There's no cracking or splintering. It did not shatter. It looks like it's very, very good for machining. So if you need to sand it or drill it or Dremel it, this is going to work really well for you. So I'm willing to bet that this stuff is very good for thermoforming. So I'm going to put that to the test right now. I'm going to use my heat gun set to 650 degrees. And I'm going to watch for when this strip starts to bend upwards. That's when I know it's hot and ready to be bent. And here it goes. It's starting to bend upwards. So I'm going to take it away from the heat. And I'm gonna just bend it with my finger, and it's actually cool to the touch already. So I'm gonna hold it into the shape that I'm looking for, and I'm just gonna cool it down. I'd say this thermoforms really, really easily. All right, so let's check out this cold casting now. I'm just going to buff it up with this scuffing pad and see if I can bring out some of that copper. Essentially what we're doing is we're just removing some of the resin away from the copper so the copper can show through. And it makes it look like a real coin. So I was definitely wrong about this. This looks like real copper. I would say that this is a really good material for cold casting. It's smashing time. Let's see how many hits of a hammer this takes. 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, wait a second. I see a little crack here forming already. 5, yep, that's it, just 5 hits. So now let's take a look at the scorecard. As for the price, at 74 cents an ounce, I would say this price is great. I bought this off of Amazon, and I'm sure you could get it off of their website too. The instructions, I'm giving a 9 out of 10 because they were very complete, very well written, and had pictures and everything included. Durability, I'll give it a 6. It did snap in the twist test and bend test, and only took 5 hits of the hammer. Machinability, I'm gonna give it a 10. It cut like butter. It was so smooth, there was no cracking. It was very, very easy to machine this material. And for fire resistance, I give it a 4 out of 10. It caught fire, and it stayed on fire for quite a while before it put itself out. As for being bubble-free, I'm gonna give it an 8 out of 10. It filled in the corners of the 1-inch cube really well. I didn't see any gaps from bubbles getting caught in any corners. However, when I did look at the close-up of the surface, it did have little tiny bubbles instead of a glassy smooth surface. I'm gonna give it a 9 out of 10 for simplicity because this is a very beginner-friendly material. There was no obnoxious odors. I didn't have to vacuum degas it or put it in a pressure pot It was an easy mix, 1-to-1 ratio by volume. I didn't have to weigh anything. I would say that this is one of the most beginner-friendly materials I've ever seen. For thermoforming, I'm gonna give it a 10 out of 10. This was an absolute pleasure to thermoform. It took the heat pretty quickly, it bent so easily, it wasn't hot to the touch, and it cooled down pretty quickly too. It was just so easy. For cold casting, I'm gonna give it a 9 out of 10. I think it buffed up and looked like copper really, really well. However, it was kind of ooey gooey on some of the square pieces, so I would say that the results are a little bit hit or miss, depending on how you do it. You might have to get just the right ratio of the metal powders in there. And lastly, for tinting, I'm gonna give it a 7 out of 10, only because it's going to take a lot of tint to really make a difference in the color, because that white is very overpowering. But it did take color pretty well, and there was no adverse reactions or anything like that. Overall, I'd say that the Let's Resin polyurethane resin is a lightweight and easy to use, great material for prop making. Please like this video and subscribe to my channel for more durability tests with Maker Materials.